So let's talk about the Sabbath. What is the Sabbath? The Sabbath is a seventh-day celebration of Feast of the Lord. It occurs sundown on Friday night and lasts to sundown on Saturday. It's the seventh day of the week, and it's a celebration. It's one of the greatest feasts because it's the only feast that occurs more than once a year. The Sabbath wasn't created by the law. The law only commands us to remember the Sabbath. The Sabbath was created, at creation. Genesis 2:2-3. On the seventh day, God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. We can see then that the Sabbath was created at creation, and from the very start of time, the Sabbath existed. Well, who's the creator? Yeshua is the creator. John 1:1-3. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. Seeing that Yeshua is the creator, one thing becomes clear. Yeshua is the one who rested on the Sabbath. This is amazing. Most people never think about this. When I talk to the average believer and I ask them who the creator is, they say God. Then I point to John, and then they say, okay, well, it's Jesus. Then I ask them, well, who rested on the Sabbath day? And they say, God. And then I say, well, doesn't it say that the Sabbath day rest was created by the Creator? And they kind of think about it for a while. You see, Yeshua rested on the Sabbath day. He's the one who created it. Perhaps this is why they call him the Lord of the Sabbath. Luke 6:5. And he said to them, the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath. Not only did Yeshua create the Sabbath by resting on the seventh day, but the Sabbath is a celebration of his kingship. You see, in scholarship, oftentimes they ask a question. A lot of ancient cultures had what's called an enthronement ceremony. And this enthronement ceremony usually happened once a year. And it was a celebration of the enthronement of the king. It was often connected to their ancient gods and deities. And so it showed the king's connection to other gods and his source of authority. The question is often asked, where is Israel's enthronement ceremony? The first thing we have to understand is that Israel didn't have a king. God was their king. And so the enthronement ceremony we have to look for is not an enthronement ceremony of man, but an enthronement ceremony of God. The enthronement ceremony that people are often looking for is found in Genesis. It's in the creation account, because the creation account is God establishing a temple in the cosmos, God creating a temple, and then sitting on his throne. The meaning of the word that he rested on the seventh day, although it does mean to cease from his work and to declare his work complete, it also means that he sat on his throne. In other words, he began to rule as king. Thus, the Sabbath is a celebration of Yeshua as king. If the Sabbath is a celebration of his enthronement, if it's a celebration of Yeshua being king, does that mean that if we reject the Sabbath, we're rejecting the celebration of his kingship? So now we have a little bit of history and understanding of the Sabbath, but how do we keep the Sabbath? The first commandment of the Sabbath is to keep it holy, because it's set apart unto the Lord. Exodus 28. See also Exodus 31:14, Leviticus 19:3, Leviticus 19:30, Leviticus 26:2, and Deuteronomy 5:12. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. It is interesting that we're commanded to remember it, because it's not made holy week by week or year by year. It was made holy once at creation by Yeshua when he took his throne. It is the only day that he declared to be holy, that was declared to be holy because of his actions. The second command is to have a sacred gathering. It's not a day to be lazy. It's a day to devote to him. It's his day. And so he's given it to us, and so too we must give it to him. Leviticus 23:3. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. That's a sacred gathering. You shall do no work on it. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwelling. The focus of not working is not the lack of work, but instead what we're doing in its place. We're taking this day and we're devoting it to Him. You see, Israel once was slaves, and they were commanded to rest every Sabbath. Slaves have to work continuously, but free men rest. And so we rest in Him, and we devote this day, this Sabbath day, to Him. We, instead of seeking our own pleasure, choose to seek His pleasure. We, instead of choosing to do our own will, instead choose to do His will. We, instead of focusing on our own provision, choose to look at Him as our provider. And so the Sabbath day is a day to the Lord. It belongs to Him, and by celebrating it, we are honoring Him. It's not any Sabbath, it's the Sabbath. It's the Sabbath of the Lord. When people say that they keep a different Sabbath, what they're describing is that they're keeping their own Sabbath, but they're not keeping His Sabbath. See, today in this teaching, we're not talking about our Sabbath. We're talking about the Sabbath of the Lord. If we keep our Sabbath, but not His, does that mean that we're forsaking the commandments of God for our own traditions? If we keep our Sabbath, but not His, does that mean that we're putting our will above Him? Does that mean that we view our own way, our own will, our own commandments, the commandments of the church, above His will and His way and His commandments? Who are we to set aside the commandments of God for our own commandments? Our commandments, the words of man, are but dust compared to His words. His words are eternal. Our words will die. His words will last forever, but our words fade when we do. Let us not seek the approval of man. Let us not seek the words of man. Let us not seek the honor of man. Let us seek His way. Let us follow after Him with the whole heart. Let us seek to keep His commandments, not in the wisdom of man, but in the wisdom of God. The third commandment is about the continuity of the Sabbath. Perhaps you would say the Sabbath was just for the Jews, that it's been done away with, or that it's an Old Covenant Sabbath, or an Old Testament Sabbath. The truth is that we're commanded to keep the Sabbath from generation to generation, perpetually. Exodus 31:16. Therefore the children of Israel should keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. The fourth commandment is about the completion of our work. Exodus 20, verse 9. See also Exodus 23:12, Exodus 31:15, Exodus 34:21, Exodus 35:2, Leviticus 23:3, and Deuteronomy 5:13. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. What would you say? That the Lord was able to complete His work in 6 days, but the 6 days is not enough for you? Would you take that which does not belong to you? The Lord has called the Sabbath His. Do you dare to take it from Him? Do you dare to lay hold of that which is His? Repent. I too broke the Sabbath. I too walked contrary to His way and His will, but I repented. We have to lay down our will. We have to lay down our way and follow after Him with a whole heart, so that we may learn to keep His Torah, to show that we love Him, not for bondage, but for love. The fifth commandment is about the ownership of the Sabbath. As we have already seen, the Sabbath belongs to Yeshua. That's why it's the Sabbath of the Lord. It belongs to Him, not us. Exodus 20:10. See also Leviticus 23:3 and Deuteronomy 5:14. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. It is not my Sabbath. It is not your Sabbath. It is not the church's Sabbath. It's the Sabbath of the Lord. It belongs to Him. Those who would take the Sabbath and remove it steal from the Lord. It belongs to Him. They have reached their hand out to take what does not belong to them, and they have stolen from the Lord. They have taken what is holy, and they have profaned it. If a man is cursed for removing the boundary stone of his neighbor, how much more so for removing the boundary that the Lord Almighty has set up? Do not reach out your hand to take what is his. Do not take hold of that which is holy. Repent. If you're a pastor, a leader of a congregation or a church, and you have taught others to forsake the Sabbath, to walk in your way, to keep your commandment, repent. It's in your own wisdom that you have sought your own way, and the Lord has had enough. It's time for his church to keep his way. It's time for his church to remember his way. It's time for his church to remember the Torah, to keep his commandments. The sixth commandment is not about working, but about resting. We're commanded to rest. Exodus 20:10. See also Exodus 23:12, Exodus 31:15, Exodus 34:21, Exodus 35:2, Leviticus 23:3, and Deuteronomy 5:14. In it you shall do no work. It's funny, because when people talk about the Sabbath being a bondage, I just look at them and say, you've never kept the Sabbath, have you? It's like someone describing sitting in a hammock in the shade, sipping your favorite beverage as bondage. This is ridiculous. It can't be bondage, because it's a delight. It's a delight to my soul. When we enter into the Sabbath, we enter into the rest of the Lord. Don't call his delight, his commandment, a bondage. If obeying God is bondage to you, then you're in sin and you need to repent. When we cease from our work, we enter into the rest of the Messiah, the rest that he entered into, the rest that's been promised to us. The work of the Sabbath is rest. It's a cessation of work. In fact, the Sabbath must be kept in faith because we look to him to provide for us. We don't provide for ourselves. We trust in him, our master, our maker, our husband, to provide for us. The seventh commandment is related to the commandment not to work. It's that we shall not kindle a flame on the Sabbath. Exodus 35:3. You shall kindle no fire throughout your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Some take this commandment to be about the physical work of starting a fire, because back before lighters were invented and gas stoves, it was a lot of work to start a fire. Some take this work to be more about the food preparation. After all, if you can't kindle a flame, you can't cook. Could this command be designed to allow your wives to rest? Consider this. If the beast of the field, if the stranger, and if the slave weren't allowed to work, how much more so your wife, whom you love? The eighth command is about not making others work. Deuteronomy 5:14. See also Exodus 20:10. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor any of your cattle, nor any stranger who is within your gates, that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. If the Most High won't ask us to work on the Sabbath, who are we to ask someone else to work? Are we greater than he? The ninth and last commandment is a commandment of freedom. Deuteronomy 5:15. And remember that you were slaves in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there by a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. When we keep the Sabbath, we enter into his rest, and we walk in freedom. Those who reject the Sabbath walk as slaves and are still in bondage. Cast off your bondage and choose the freedom of the Lord, and walk as free men. Keep his Sabbath and enter into his rest. So why did the Lord create the Sabbath? The Sabbath was created as a sign between us and him. Exodus 31:13. Speak also to the children of Israel, saying, Surely my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you. It was the Lord that blessed the Sabbath and set it apart. Exodus 20:11. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Brothers and sisters, do not treat what he has blessed as if it were bondage. Do not disregard what he has given us. Do not cast aside the gift of his Sabbath. Instead, humble yourselves, return to the commandments of the Lord, and keep his ways. Israel, our fathers, were once cast into exile, cut off from the covenant. They were sentenced to judgments, and so the Sabbath was removed from them. But because of the grace, the mercy, the love of Yeshua, because of his never-ending favor, he has restored us to the covenant. He has caused us to walk in his ways and to keep his commandments. He's brought us into the bound of a new covenant which is different, because the old covenant was written on tablets of stone, but the new covenant he writes on our hearts. But this new covenant, he causes us to understand his law, and he writes the law, the Torah, on our hearts. Do not walk in bondage as your fathers did. Do not be stiff-necked. Do not be like those who died in the wilderness and had a lack of faith. Turn your hearts to the Father. Seek to keep his commandment. Turn yourselves to Yeshua and submit to his authority. Do not seek the authority of man. Do not seek the approval of man. For what is man compared to the Almighty? Do not fear man. Man can only kill you, but God can destroy your soul forever. Fear him and love him. Love him for all that he is. Love him for all that he has done for you, for his grace and his mercy, for this great gift of salvation which we received by the work of Yeshua through his death and resurrection, so that we might walk in righteousness, so that we might walk in freedom. Do not use this freedom as a chance to sin, but instead walk in righteousness, walk in obedience. Turn your hearts to the Father. Ask him for a new heart, that he might take out your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh, so that you will learn to keep his commandments, so that you will learn to obey. It's not about you, it's about him. Make him the center. Not man-made religion, not man-made rules, but God's rules and God's ways. Cast aside your traditions, which are vain, and seek the commandments of the Lord Almighty. Return to God. Remember Torah.